Hello everyone! Today's video is about the data sampling function in DToolsPro. In an automated control system, the data sampling function is essential. The HMI can collect data from sensors or devices periodically or based on specific trigger signals, capturing parameters such as temperature, pressure, and humidity. These parameters can then be displayed on the HMI screen in data tables or trend charts, allowing operators to monitor data more intuitively and conduct historical analysis. The new Kinco DToolsPro configuration software supports many data types, including single-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit, floating point, string, and structured data to meet diverse application needs. The sampling method supports periodic sampling with a minimum period of 100 milliseconds. It supports sampling trigger conditions based on bits, words, and combined bit and word expressions. The final outcome will be a data table or a trend chart, based on different application needs. If you want to see the data, you can choose the table format. If you prefer to see data trends, the trend chart is a better choice. You can export and search for historical data. With a query function, you can quickly locate specific data. The trend chart supports cursor positioning and zoom functions. First, I will show you the backend configuration of data sampling. Find Sample on the project bar. We will start by adding a new sampling configuration. First, enter a sampling description, which is a required field. Then set your sampling conditions. You can choose a fixed cycle or a fixed time for cycle sampling. With a fixed cycle, you can set the system to sample every second or every 100 milliseconds. Also, you can choose to set a variable period. If you choose fixed time sampling, the system will collect data at regular cycles within a specified time frame. Let's say an air-conditioned room requires sampling analysis for 1 hour every afternoon. You can set the start time to 5 p.m. and the end time to 6 p.m. The process of bit, word, and expression settings are similar. You can also configure the system to clear data or restrict sampling to occur only within the specified window. In the capacity settings, you can manage the sampled data stored by days or by record count, up to 365 days or 100,000 records. When the storage limit is reached, you can choose to either delete the oldest records or stop saving new ones. Next, the channel settings, which is the configuration of the sampled data. After adding a channel, you can name it and link variables. A single sampling task supports up to 256 channels. You can export data to an HMI or USB drive, either on a set schedule or triggered by specific events. Supported formats include CSV and secure, non-editable PDF, with features like file encryption, dynamic file names, and customizable channel names for added flexibility and security. Here, I set up 2 sampling tasks. The first task uses cycliac sampling and links 3 channels. I enables the export function and sets the enable conditions. The second task uses trigger-based sampling, binding an external communication variable in floating point format. Now, let's move to the screen interface, starting with the trend chart element, which you can find in the curve here. You can select the data sources and the channels. In the channel settings, you can configure the line color, width, type, point markers, as well as set the maximum and minimum values for both the data source and the variable. Using the cursor data setting, you can bind an output variable to the corresponding variable. When the cursor is used, it transmits the current value of the channel to the bound variable. You can also configure the visibility and enable settings of the cursor through variable binding. Below are the cursor window settings, where you can adjust the font, size, title bar name, and other display options. The background color can also be set. If you prefer a transparent background, simply leave the background color option unchecked. The content displayed on each page can be set based on either the number of points or a specific time. You can configure the number of ticks and their color on the X and Y axis. These options can be enabled or disabled as needed. If you prefer a simpler trend chart display, you can hide these elements. At the bottom, the custom section allows you to define the minimum and maximum values for the Y-axis. The vertical axis will automatically divide into equal segments based on the number of ticks set. Next are the regular display settings. The trend chart screen displays the cyclic sampling data. On the right side, corresponding numeric elements are set up to show real-time values. The bottom section displays the output of the cursor data. The next configuration is triggered sampling. We use communication variables here. During actual use, you'll need to configure communication settings or disable communication to avoid system errors. The other configurations are the same with cyclic sampling. In this setup, the maximum value of the y-axis is determined by a variable, which is why the current y-axis coordinates on the screen display as 3 hashtags. Next is the historical data display. You can choose the data source and configure the relevant channels through this element. In the table properties, you'll find table drawing, settings, and export settings. Here you can configure display elements such as the browsing frame, borders, and colors. The browsing frame allows users to navigate through table pages, making it easier to view large sets of historical data. In table settings, you can configure the cell format and set the number of entries displayed per page in the table. Export settings are mainly used for exporting the front-end elements, with configurations similar to those in the backend. The key difference is that front-end contents only include the currently displayed content, such as filtered data, while backend exports contain the entire dataset. In Query Property, you can configure the query status, the variable that triggers the query, and the trigger method. Now, let's run an offline simulation to demonstrate the project. First, enter the screen displaying periodic sampling. You'll see the trend chart updating in real time, reflecting data changes. On the right side, sampling variables increment automatically, as configured in the backend for demonstration purposes. Clicking using cursors, you can see the corresponding variable output and the cursor data area in the upper right corner updates in real time, displaying the current data. For the zoom set, the zoom value is set to 0 by default. It's important to note that the zoom setting is based on a percentage scale. When the value is set to 100, it represents 100% zoom, meaning the screen displays at its original size. Next is the trigger sampling demonstration. Enter a value for grape, then click the trigger sampling button. You'll see the effect on the right side indicator light, confirming the trigger activation. The cursor and zoom functions work the same as in cycliac sampling. The historical data is presented in chart form. Typically, you can use the query function for quick navigation. You can export the data for reviewing. That's all for the data sampling. You can learn more about the DToolsPro from our YouTube channel.